You are not simply what you do one time. Going to the gym one time is not going to get you results. Meditating one time might feel good, but it's not going to get you long lasting positive results for your life. You are what you do over and over and over continuously throughout your life, personally and professionally. And when you take any quote unquote successful person in any area of life or business, you start to notice that they all have something in common. They have a set of rituals or systems or what we're going to call success habits that they do over and over and over to get a specific result. And they instilled and installed these habits into their life consciously so that one day they could fulfill and act on these habits subconsciously. It's kind of like when you take a long drive somewhere and you've gone through this route 100 times or more, and you forget the drive and you get home and you're like, wow, how did I even get here? Right? You've done it so many times, it becomes unconscious. That's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about the happiness habit, the success habit that will lead you to greater fulfillment and enjoyment in your life and your business. And to do that, we are talking to happiness and habit expert Jason Harwood. I don't know if he would coin himself as that, but he is a great man. We just met, and he's going to instill some habits on you that will change your life. Before we get to Jason, you know the fee for the show. We're not going to show you ads. We're not going to show you annoying paid sponsorships. All that we ask is that you share this show with just one person if you take away something of value from this conversation, if we make you smile, if you learn or take away a philosophy or a strategy that will help you to take your life to the next level. Share this show with just one person. You're the reason that this show has grown the way that it has over the past 2 years that we started the broadcast. So without further ado, let's talk to our special guest today, Mr. Jason Harwood. For those who don't know Jason, he is an award-winning speaker and coach. And at a time of darkness, he turned to habits to help increase the light and the happiness in his life. The practices that build successful habits made all the difference for him. Now he spends his time teaching others how to bring happier habits into their life. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Jason, thanks so much for being here, my friend.
Brandon, so good to be here. This is exciting. My absolute favorite topic to talk about. And so I am excited to spend some time here talking about habits. And, you know, it's fascinating. It's live time. It's about 7 a.m. my time. And it's interesting to think through, like, all of the habits I've already been through in just a few short moments this morning before getting ready for this. So, yeah, so much of our life is jam-packed with habits.
So let me ask you this, because I want to ask you what those few habits were that you started your morning with. But I'm curious, how do you, at this point in chapter in your life, what caused you to start focusing on habits as something that can help people live a better life? I mean, you could talk about anything, but you decided to talk about habits. Why habits, and how did that become important?
So it's kind of interesting because we're talking about, you know, which habit to implement. And sometimes I get asked that, you know, what habit should I do? And so kind of the first caution story is, you know, habits became more wildly popular after Atomic Habits by James Clear, New York Times bestselling book. And he does an incredible job of really communicating well about this concept of habits. But if you've read the book, in the introduction, he tells this tragic story. He's a senior in high school, and he is on the baseball team. And at a baseball practice, he accidentally gets hit in the face with a baseball bat. And I mean, it's just a tragic, horrific medical thing. He's in a coma. And as he's coming out of that, he has to start developing habits to heal physically, as well as kind of mentally and emotionally. And he goes on to become a college baseball player as well. And so as I start talking about habits and starting a habits podcast and all of these things, you know, it would be kind of silly and ridiculous to say, oh, well, the first thing I got to do in order to make this really work is get hit in the face with a baseball bat. And I mean, I could have done it because I got a son who played baseball all the way through high school. and I there's times he probably would have been happy to oblige, but he was also a bodybuilder and won a bodybuilding competition out of high school, and so it might have killed me. But that's the challenge is that oftentimes we look at other people's habits or life experiences and say, I got to match mine exactly to theirs. Well, not 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 really. So that's my first caution is as I talk about the habits that I participate in, the things that have worked for me and really why they work. The key is to identify the patterns and process more than the exact habit. Oh, this person does this, and so I'm going to do it too, which is interesting because some habits I have picked up because of that, kind of saying, oh, somebody else does this and it's successful, I'm going to give it a try. But
Yeah.
yeah, so to answer your specific question of kind of how I got in this, my experience is not like James Clear. I call his a light switch moment where you're going along and life is bright and sunny, and then all of a sudden, bam, it's not anymore.
Mm.
And it's not just that. I've talked with many people who, whether it's a car accident or the end of a significant relationship or a health crisis or the job loss, a lot of people will go from bright light to darkness. Mine was not like that. I think of mine more as like a sunset where I can't tell you the exact date at which it was dark, in a sunset, at what minute is it officially now dark? Last minute, it was only, it was still kind of light, but now it's officially dark. Well, that's kind of how life for me went, was just this gradual move into darkness. And it wasn't every aspect of my life. Got a good job, nice house, good family. We drive nice cars. There are so many aspects where, okay, I can check the box and say, that's good, that's good, that's good. But there was also this crazy thing happening where every single morning I would wake up and just think, I do not want to live through today. I just don't want to do today. And, it's like, I don't want to do today because, but when you looked around, it was like, oh, you don't want to interact with your great family. You don't want to go to your nice job. You don't want to live in your nice house.
Yeah.
It's like, but I don't know what, for some reason I had gotten into a place of darkness. And that's when I decided, okay, it wasn't an instantaneous thing that got me there. And it's not going to be an instantaneous thing that gets me out. You mentioned it's not one day of meditation. It's not, going to the gym once. You kind of float down the river sometimes into a state where you just look around and say, I don't want to be here anymore.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of climbing the cliff or climbing the ladder to get back up to the rim of the canyon where you can say, now I can see and feel the light. And as you do, it starts to get lighter and lighter and lighter. So for me, it was just that one morning of just saying, man, I don't want to live today. And then thinking, I'm not spending my whole life feeling like this. I'm going to start making some changes. And so I started implementing some habits specifically designed for happiness that would help me turn that around and turn around other aspects of my life.
Wow. Fascinating story. It's fascinating
long story.
It is. I'm excited to dive more into it because it's fascinating, and I relate to you in the sense that we live very different lives. I currently don't have children. You do, several by the looks of it, and I want to talk to you about that too. And it's fascinating how we can have all of these things that others look at and they say you should be happy because you have all these outside things. You've got the family, you've got the cars, you've got the house. Yet we can still wake up and feel that darkness. We can still ask ourselves the question, do I want to live like this forever? And I can only imagine that you even looked at that at times and you felt guilt because you're like, well, how can I possibly feel this way? Because I have everything that I want that so many other people would want. And if I ever told anyone I didn't want this, it would just look crazy. Like we have that shame and that guilt, but really it's, we individually solely have to feel fulfilled, have to feel good.
Yep.
And if we don't feel that way, it's hard to give that to other people. It's hard to give that to our family. like I like how you said it took time for you to get to that point. It didn't just happen all of a sudden. And
Yeah.
it took time for you also to get to where you are now. I'm curious, when you recognized that you weren't where you wanted to be, was there a specific catalyst to, oh, I'm going to start just incorporating a happiness habit, something new into my life? Like, did you read Atomic Habits at that point? Was it something else? What did that look like?
Yeah. So it was a, kind of um, a moment where I was talking with some friends. My oldest son graduated from high school. He's the baseball player, bodybuilder guy. His name is Josh, and he had decided he wanted to spend a couple of years, and he's now living in Hawaii for a couple of years
Wow.
on doing some service there. And so as he was getting ready to leave, and I'm like, oh man, I'm not going to see my son for a couple of years. I We were talking and about how that situation would work, and I was reminded of a experience and a story. And I shared this with him about Benjamin Franklin. Benjamin Franklin is famous for having these 13 virtues in his life.
Yeah.
And he would work on one virtue every single week. And over the course of a year, he would work on each one of them 4 times throughout the course of a year. And then he claims in his biography that he saw significant increase in every area of those 13 virtues. And so what I did is I kind of exactly what you said. I looked around on the outside and said, I've got everything on the outside that anyone would think you would need in order to be happy. And yet I'm miserable and kind of pretend my way through a bit of life, because you want to just be walking around telling every single person you meet, if someone had said at the time, hey, how you doing? I would have said, fine.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the problem, is you're just fine. And then you're just kind of floating along. But it was this light bulb moment as my son was leaving to say, okay, I need to identify the inner core values. And I had read Atomic Habits and Power of Habits and Tiny Habits and just, articles and everything. I knew how to create habits. If you had asked me how to create a habit around flossing, I could tell you the 3 simple steps to make sure you floss every day. But that wasn't doing anything for me. I was doing 100 push-ups a day, having kind of habit hacked my way into push-ups. That wasn't bringing significant levels of joy. And so I said, okay, I've got to find inner core values. Things for me like learning, generosity, kindness, belief in myself, discipline, some of these inner core things, because you mentioned it. Sometimes we're looking for happiness as an outside in prospect, but as anybody who does that consistently, eventually comes to the reality that happiness is an inside out. It's who you are at your core, being comfortable and happy with who you are at your core and moving out. So as my son was leaving, I thought, okay, I got to start developing these inner core characteristics and use the same pattern, whether it's flossing or eating more vegetables or being more charitable. The process is the same, but for me, it was the identification of this is who I want to be, not just what I want to have. This is, regardless of whether I have a good job or, get let go, or during the pandemic, so many people lost jobs and had jobs cut back, and, there's so much instability. But whatever happens in the swirl around me, if I'm set in a core set of values, then I can still be happy. And so I went through a kind of a process of identifying, okay, what are my key core things I want to be as a human being? I just want to be that type of person, and being that type of person brings happiness. And so then I just started working on one and identifying some small, easy things I could do consistently to build habits in some of these areas. And then I kind of borrowed from Benjamin Franklin and tried to focus on one a week. And so every week I kind of go back and say, okay, how is my habit in this area? Is it still consistent, or do I need a little bit of time and attention for it?
Wow. It reminds me of that quote of you don't change until the pain of changing is less than the pain of staying the same.
Yeah.
And, you realizing your son was going to be gone for a few years, saying to yourself, well, I'm going to work on myself during this time so that I can be a different person for him and for everyone else that I care about. But most importantly, so that you can be a different person for yourself.
Hmm.
That's powerful. And I think that that's something that each of us can ask ourselves, okay, what are the core values that I personally want to live by? I know personally it's been a long time since I've written down the character traits and the values that I want to exhibit and become
Hmm.
and who I want to be. And if you don't choose those, I can only imagine that the outside world is going to choose them for you, right?
Yeah. Well, you have a core set of values, regardless of whether you are consciously aware of them or not. That's the thing. Awareness is so critical here because 80 to 90% of your life is habits, whether you're aware of them or not. You have a core set of values. You have things, the umbrella habit is discipline. It's doing things with consistency. The reality is you have a very consistent pattern. There are things in which you are remarkably disciplined. But if you wrote down the things that you're remarkably disciplined in, it's how much satisfaction or joy or pride do you take in that list, right? Or is it like, yeah, I am remarkably disciplined at spending X amount of time on social media every day. I'm remarkably
Mm.
disciplined on spending X amount of time in kind of entertainment versus education, right? So all of these things, remarkably disciplined in how much we exercise, how we eat, how we spend or save money, and how we grow our core character. And so you are consistent, you are disciplined. It's just becoming aware of, am I consistent and disciplined in the things that matter and make a difference?
Why did you focus on one character trait at a time? And how did you know that that was important to start with one?
Yeah, there's also learning and research that indicates that if I mean, and you know this, when you say focus on something, you can really only focus on one thing. We try to pretend like we can focus on a lot of different things or that we can kind of multitask, but you can't really. And so when you want to see actual results in an area, you have to put in a focused mental and time commitment to that thing. And so for me, trying to focus on, if you took Benjamin Franklin's list, 13 things, it's not possible to focus on 13 things at a time. And even if you tried, you wouldn't see significant improvement in any one area. But what we underestimate is the amount of progress we can make in short time of really disciplined focus attention. And so just a week at a time, I was able to implement some habits. And it is true that once I came back around to it, some of those habits had slipped a bit and I needed to reinforce them. But if you try to set 3 to 5 goals, the likelihood of you accomplishing them goes down. If you set one goal and become really focused on it, and that's kind of the hard thing is if you set one goal and really focus on it and then move to the next one and the next one and the next one, you can get 3 to 5 things done. If you
Yeah.
try to focus on 3 to 5 things all at once, you won't get any of them done. And so when we try to take on too much, when we try to just power through a bunch of things, it doesn't happen. But if we just focus in on small, simple things consistently, that's where we see results.
Have you read the book called The One Thing?
Yeah.
Great book.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
talks a lot about that. And it reminded me of that when you said focus on one principle, one habit that goes along with it. I mean, for everyone who hasn't read that book, I highly recommend it. It's by Gary Keller, who
Hmm.
is the founder of Gary Keller Williams Realty, or one of the founders.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
he talks pretty much about multitasking is a myth, right? If you're
Yeah.
focusing on doing all these different things at once, you're really just switching between tasks. not actually focusing on the one task that will take you where you want to go. I'm curious, when you were making this list of habits and putting them down, and more so the list of core values, I should say, that you then built the foundation for the habits that you followed, how did you know, or how did you come about the different core values that you wanted to exhibit? Did you think back to certain times in your life where you exhibited certain ones? Like, what did that look like? How did you put them down on paper?
Uh, yeah, some of a couple of different things. One is I did kind of go and try to look at people like Benjamin Franklin and others. I'm a person of faith, and so I spent some time studying through scripture and saying, okay, what are some of the core things that are taught there, and whatever um, kind of your belief system is, you can find some things that will be good recommendations. Another great practice is exactly what you said. You take some time and identify. You kind of have to get into a quiet thought space for this, but just start thinking back through your life, maybe the last, I don't know, year to 5 years, but you can look for longer patterns and just start identifying moments in your life where you felt fulfilled, times in your life where you felt that sense of pride of accomplishment, things you were doing, people you were with that helped you feel like you really were in that space of light and happiness. And then you start looking for common factors in all of them. Who were you around? What were some of the things that were happening? And you start to identify some of those core characteristics. Another one is kind of it's a Stephen Covey recommendation, but he, with his habit, begin with the end in mind. It's kind of I don't know, it is slightly, it's not morbid, but you think of your eulogy and you think of what are the things you will want to have said about you. And my dad passed away about 12 years ago, and my brother and I got to speak at his funeral. And so it kind of put me in that mindset. I've thought about that a lot since, of what do I want that to be? What are the characteristics I want? And I had one experience. It was really remarkable. I have a daughter, she's 17. And last summer, anytime my kids ask me what I want, and now they've stopped asking, but anytime it's my birthday, it's Christmas, it's whatever. Anytime my kids say, "Hey, Dad, what do you want?" Father's Day, I always say the same thing. I say a goal. Your gift to me would be you writing down a goal and committing to work on it for the next 3 months, because it's the only thing they could give me that would, like, you know, otherwise it's, "Hey, Dad, can I have $20 to go buy you a present?" I'm like, I'll just spend my own $20. But the one thing my kids could give me that would have significant meaning would be goals. And so it was Father's Day last summer, and my daughter, she knows already. She's 16 now, and this was last year. She was 16, now she's 17. And so she came to me at Father's Day and she said, "Dad, I know that learning is really important to you. And so this summer, every single day, I'm going to learn one new thing and write down what I learned." And that was so powerful for me, because for her to come to me and say, "Dad, I know that learning is really important to you," was such a kind of this powerful and emotional moment, because learning is actually one of the 7 core values that I'm trying to work on, and that she had recognized it and was willing to implement a habit around it was huge. So if you just think, like, if you've got kids, put yourself in that place. And if your kid walked up to you and said, "Hey, Mom, hey, Dad, I know that blank is really important to you," what would you want that to be? Now, one of the challenges is, Brandon, is sometimes we make a list of like 37 things we would want our kids, but really just, I mean, be, you can even do like a final 4 and just list out all of these things and pair them up and then start winnowing them down, right? Like which one of these and move them to the next round, and which one of those and move them to the next round, until you get down to kind of a manageable list. Because again, it will be difficult to behave consistently in 37 different ways that people around you would recognize. But the fact that I read consistently, I listen to podcasts a lot, I do podcasts, I have been a real driver in my kids' education. Those things consistently over 16, 17 years caused my daughter to go, yeah, learning is really important to my dad. And so what do you want that to be for you?
Yes. A lot of things you're saying right now, all of what you're saying is really important. What I really like and what I hear you saying is several different things. Think about how you want to be remembered by people once you're no longer here on this earth.
Mm-hmm.
What would you like people to say? Jason is this, Jason was this to me, Jason made me feel this way. We don't consciously think of things like that unless we take what you mentioned of the quiet thought space and we take some time to really write down who we want to be there. But also what you said is really important. If you're listening right now and you're thinking, I'm in a similar place to where Jason said he was, I'm feeling like I'm not really fulfilled where I am. I have reasons to be, but I'm not feeling that way. And it's not logical, but the reality is I'm not feeling the way that I want to feel. If you're that person, well, have you always felt this way? The reality is probably not. Like there have been times in your life where you were really proud. You were really enthusiastic. You did feel really confident. Like when people ask me, Brandon, I don't feel confident. Like I want to be more confident. I want to feel better. It's like, okay, well, when do you feel confident? Because I gather that there's at least one point of your day where you do feel confident about something. And they say, oh, when I got in front of the room and gave my dissertation, or when I was in college and I used to get to the front of the room and give my project report, or when I'm part of a team, or when I'm spending time with my children or my spouse or whatever, that's when I feel best. Okay, great. Well, you do feel that way sometimes. So what if you could do more of that and feel that way more, or find new things that replicate that emotion? And what you also said about Ben Franklin as an example, find someone and model someone who you want to be more like. Like for me, for years, that was Jim Rohn. Jim Rohn was the first person I ever listened to in audio on personal development. And I was like, whoa, these ideas are alien to me. I've never heard of these things before. I want to be more like this. And he actually has a book on character. He has many books, but I read all of his stuff. And then I found Tony Robbins and I found all these other people. And I was like, I want to be more like these people, but I don't want to be them. Like you said earlier, I want to adopt some of their own characteristics and mold them and blend them with my own to create this own unique concoction of who I am and how I show up for other people, but also how I show up for myself.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, it's so important that aspect of becoming aware of how you are showing up for yourself. Because if you're consistently in a place of like, man, I don't want to do this, I don't want to be here, I don't want to live through today. There were days I woke up and all I could think of is, when do I get to go back to sleep? Not because I was like fatigued and tired. It was just, when is today going to be over?
Yeah.
And if you're thinking that from the first second you wake up, that's sometimes it's an outside in thing, but often it's an inside out challenge.
Absolutely. And I'm curious, just real quick, can you give me an example of a couple of the characteristics that you originally wrote down? I know you mentioned learning. What's one or two more that you wrote down for yourself? Because I have a follow-up question to that.
Yeah. So I came up with 7, and there I put them into this Happily Ever Habits guide. You can get it at my website. But belief, kind of belief in myself. Now, as I mentioned, I'm a person of faith, and so in the faith community, we often call it faith. But I didn't want that to be kind of a something that people with different thought traditions turned away from, because the reality of what it is this kind of belief in yourself, a belief in the goodness that can happen, a belief in the happiness that can be there. It's the beginning of every other outcome is a belief. I mean, as we're thinking about the oldies but the goodies and the Jim Rome and the Napoleon Hill, think and grow rich, right? I mean, the first line, think.
Mm.
And so how you think about yourself. So that's that belief one. And then I have integrity, knowledge, self-control, gratitude, charity, and humility. And then kind of the umbrella one to all of those is discipline
Mm.
and doing it consistently.
Got it. Okay. I love those. And everyone, again, he mentioned it very quickly, and we're gonna talk about this towards the end too. But thejasonharwood.com, you can check out the happily ever habits guide. You can check that out for yourself. He mentions these 7 there, as well as how you can begin implementing them in your own into your life. But I'm curious. So when you say learning, it's very, maybe for me, but I'm sure for many others too, it's very easy to see, okay, what habits or habit can we start with in order to make learning an everyday part of life? Listen to podcasts,
Yeah.
you can read books, you can talk to really smart people or people who are just smarter than you in a certain area, right? But when you say something like self-belief now or faith, some people can look at that and say, well, what can I do each day in order to build belief in myself? For you, when you're focusing on one of these characteristics at a time, how do you then begin to form habits based on the characteristic?
Yeah. And that was a fun challenge to think, gosh, what really is at the core of this and what are some things I can do? And there are suggestions for each of the 7. But again, they're just suggestions, and maybe you could come up with something else. And what is fascinating as I did some research, because I tried to read articles and books and even some kind of published literature, peer reviewed stuff around some of these things, is that there are few of these habits that I think are things that you're going to hear and go, oh my gosh, I've never heard of that before. It's stuff that you're going to think of and go, man, I have thought about that many times and have not yet developed a consistent habit. So one example that always comes up as you talk about shifting your belief and shifting your mindset is writing a gratitude journal, or writing down 3 things that you're grateful for every single day. And man, I have been hearing that for a really long time. I mean, I've known for years, Brandon, like writing down 3 things you're grateful for can have a powerful impact on your mindset. But never developed a consistent habit around it. And so it wasn't that I learned things that I had never heard before. It was that I decided to become disciplined and consistent in some core things. So for personal belief, 2 recommended habits. One is similar to a gratitude journal, but rather than writing down 3 things you're grateful for, you write down 3 positive things about yourself every day, whether they're
Wow.
physical attributes, personality characteristics, or what you really want to start doing is becoming aware of something positive that you did the day before. And so you just think through your day and think, here's 3 things I did that I can look at and say, yeah, that's really great. The practice really is this concept of filtering, that there's so much that goes on around us that we can't possibly take it all in. And so our brain naturally filters out most of what we see, hear, and experience. And what does get through the filter are things that either we have identified as important or that are dangerous. And so when you start this practice of proactively and with intention identifying things about yourself that are positive, things for which to be grateful, your awareness of them increases. They've always been there, they've just been filtered. When you decide to intentionally look for them, you see more of them, not because they suddenly, everyone, the example everyone uses is the new car phenomenon. As soon as you buy any type of car, all of a sudden you notice all the other cars like that. All those other cars existed. They were driving around your neighborhood yesterday too. You just were not aware of them until you buy the whatever it is, and the Audi, and then you're like, oh my gosh, like everybody's driving an Audi. Not
Yeah.
everybody bought an Audi yesterday. So the same thing happens with personal belief. As soon as you start identifying, hey, here's something I do well. Here's something I did that I can be proud of. Here's something that makes a difference. More of those things will show up, and what gets crowded out now, your mind starts to now naturally filter out all the negative, all the self-doubt, all the moments where you say, see, you are a total failure. See, I knew you couldn't do it. See, I knew that this wouldn't work, because now you've started to tell your mind, no, what I want you to filter in are things that will build me up. An interesting one to build your own belief, another habit is one time a day, tell someone else something that you value about them. And it has a similar impact. As soon as you start looking for and becoming consciously aware of, who can I talk to, who can I say something to, who can I build up, in becoming consistently aware of ways you can build other people up, you naturally build yourself up. Because one of the challenges of today's society is as soon as we start talking in a certain way about other people, it puts our mind into the same type of thought process about ourselves.
Wow.
And so every time you start, gossip or whatever it is, just saying mean comments or whatever, or you don't even have to comment on social media. You start flipping through social media, and as soon as you start talking or thinking a certain way about other people, it primes your brain to talk and think that way about you.
Yes.
And so one way you can build your belief is to state kind things for other people. Tell someone every single day, I love the way you do this. And pretty soon you'll start seeing and feeling. But like you said, it's like exercise and yoga. It doesn't, it'll feel good the first day you do it. You'll see significant results as you do it for an extended period of time.
I'm stealing that, by the way. I'm stealing it. I absolutely love telling someone else something that I value about them. And, don't go to everyone in the office maybe and say, Joe, Jessica, everyone at once. Like, do it in a private setting,
Mm-hmm.
like so that you can get to everybody without it seem like you're getting to everybody and just making a chore out of it. Like, that's going to really make a difference in someone's day. I'm in sales, so I constantly see people working with customers, and I constantly see. Last week I saw a customer do this exact thing, Jason, with a sales rep, where she looked at her and said, your ability to listen to me and really hear me is a blessing, because I haven't had someone listen to me the way that you just did in years. And I thank you for that. And the sales rep literally started crying when the customer said this. And she doesn't know this person. She just met her and she was with her for 20 minutes. But that small acknowledgement of someone else will make their day. But like you said, it's also just like you're changing the radio station. It's tuning you into that different frequency of, really, this is gratitude. This is gratitude. But it's also focusing on looking for the things that you want to see, right? What you search for, you will find. And to the first point that you made, which I also love, the 3 positive things about yourself each day. At times, like, listen, like the Jason who woke up saying, I want to go right back to bed, he's not going to be excited to go out to the living room or the kitchen or wherever and write down the 3 things that you value most about yourself that day or the day before. But what starts to happen is, because you're only focusing on one thing at a time, you'll do it because it's easy. And you'll start to do it and your state will change almost immediately. You'll be on the second of 3 things and you'll say, wow, I'm finding this and I'm finding that. And you might write down 10 things that day. And then you'll be going through your day and you'll say, oh, that's another thing about myself that I really like, that I've never really noticed before. So you begin to see what you look for, just like with the car example, just like with with anything, you're essentially, like you said, putting a filter on what it is you're searching for. How powerful is that? That's
Yeah.
incredible.
Yeah, and I love the word that you used. It was easy. That's one of the challenges. All of these habits should start really small and do everything you can to make it easy, because oftentimes when we start habits or goals and the scope and size of them becomes big, what we're relying on is motivation.
Mm,
I got to really feel it. If it's like workout for 30 minutes, I really kind of got to feel like working out in order to do it. And motivation is almost the least dependable
yes.
human emotion
You never
ever.
know.
You just never know. So, but if instead of saying I'm going to work out for 30 minutes, you say I'm going to do 5 air squats and 5 modified push-ups, it doesn't matter how you're feeling. You can get yourself to do 5 air squats and 5 modified push-ups, and then you're building positive momentum, because in all of habit creation, the first outcome is consistency.
Mhm.
You're not really looking for results. Results will come over time, but the first thing you're trying to develop is consistency. And so you make it small, you make it as easy as possible. Best way to make something easy is alter the environment around you. But make it small, make it easy. And then every time you do it, just kind of give yourself a personal celebration. I always give myself kind of a flex, and hey, I wrote down my 3 things today. Nice job, me. And because then the release of dopamine in your brain tells your brain, hey, you did a small thing that felt good. Let's do it again. And so that's the real process of habit creation. The real process of habit creation is start small, make it easy, and celebrate small things along the way. And again, whether you're wanting to do a gratitude journal or floss your teeth or eat more vegetables, it's all going to be start small, make it easy, and then celebrate small wins. Eating more vegetables it's very. If you wanted to eat more vegetables, it's very easy. Go buy more vegetables and put them in your fridge,
Yeah.
and buy fewer potato chips. And then when you're hungry and you open up the fridge and you've got BJ Fogg in Tiny Habits even talks about how they spend time every Sunday like cutting it all up
Yeah.
and putting it in individual Tupperware containers in their fridge, so that when they open the fridge, boom, there's a Tupperware container, and boom, they can just grab it, and it's got fruits and vegetables and things in it, healthier things. You want to eat healthier, just change your environment, buy healthier foods, you'll eat them more. So,
My
but the
wife
same thing is
does
true in
that.
any habit.
Yeah, my wife does the container thing, and I
Oh
didn't
yeah.
read that book, but I think it's cool that it's in there because I eat fruit until noon. It's an idea that I got from a book. It's called Fit for Life from back in the
Oh
day. I think
yeah.
it was the 80s or the 90s.
Yeah.
And great
Yeah.
book, talks about natural hygiene. I don't follow all of it, but I do follow the fruit till noon idea. And I open the fridge and there's just Tupperware containers of fruit, which is a lot
Mm-hmm.
more enticing than just grabbing a banana because you get the variety. So making it
Mm-hmm.
easy for yourself to follow through on the new habit
Yeah.
that you're implementing is super important because, like you said, and it's so important, people always say, I want to feel more motivated. Well, a lot of days I'm not motivated. Some parts of the day I am, but it's weird because it's the most random parts of the day that I'm motivated. Usually it's at like 10:30 at night before I'm going to bed. And it's like, I wish this struck hours earlier, but you can't rely on motivation, but you can lean on your rituals. You can lean
Yep.
on your habits. And that's really the essence of what we're talking about. I'm curious with you. I know you said, you can't look at my habits and use them. It's going to be different for everyone else, which is very true. I'm curious though, if you had to tell somebody and they said, Jason, you got no choice but to tell me right now, what is the one habit that you've adopted in your life that for the foreseeable future, at least, you cannot see yourself getting rid of because it's only added to your levels of happiness throughout your day? What
Mm-hmm.
would you say this one happiness habit would be?
Yeah, for me, it is. I've mentioned it for gratitude, and I've mentioned it for self belief. It's that writing down of a couple of things every day, and it was funny because how I got consistent with this is that to make it easy and to make it small, this isn't why, but during COVID, we got bored. So we decided to get a dog. And so we got a COVID dog. And it became my responsibility, despite the promises from every single person in the family that they would help. It became my responsibility every day to let the dog out in the morning. And so I would let the dog out in the morning, and I had primed my environment. I would take my little journal and I would sit it on the table right next to the back door. And so I would let the dog out to go outside in the morning, and then I would turn and sit and write 3 things I was grateful for, or 3 things about myself that made me feel positive, and 3 things that had happened the day before, because so much of it is awareness. And that becomes an important habit in saying, how can I start to change the way I feel about things? It's becoming aware of the good things and the things about yourself that are good, the things about your surroundings, the thing about your life that are good. And over time, slowly that starts to shift that mental to say, man, I've got a lot of great things going on. And it's not just all of the outside things that we've already identified as not bringing happiness, but you start to identify some inner core things. So
Yeah.
writing down a couple of things every single day makes a huge difference over time.
Yeah, you're training your brain to look for those specific things. And if you don't train it, it's like a muscle. It's just,
Yeah.
you're not going to have anything, but the more you train it, the bigger the muscle gets. And then the less it requires for maintenance as you go.
Yeah.
But the beginning's the hardest. But again, because of that, make it easy, right? Even if you start with writing down one thing that you're grateful for, just keep the journal literally next to your bed if it makes it easy.
Yep.
And write down one thing you're grateful for, one thing about you, and one thing you did the day before. And soon you'll become inspired and you'll write more and you'll enjoy it more and you'll start finding more things. I read a book years ago. I think it was The Magic by Rhonda Byrne, the same author who wrote The Secret. And one of the practices in The Magic, it's all about gratitude, is to write down 10 things each day that you're grateful for. And her challenge was, I don't ever want you to repeat any of the things that you write down. And it took a little bit. It took like a month
That's
or two.
difficult.
It
Yeah.
is very difficult. And it makes you really think, what else could I possibly be grateful for? Oh, I really love this pen because it allows me to write. Or I really love my beard because if I didn't have it, I'd be totally bald. Or, anything that you can find, right? Like, I
Yeah.
really love this flannel. Like, whatever it is, you find what you look for. So I can see why that's been a very impactful habit for you in your life. You talked about your happily ever habits guide, and you mentioned how the 7 core principles that you started with are in there. Now, when people go to your website, again, for those listening, it's thejasonharwood.com. Links are in the description too. What can people expect when they download your happily ever habits guide?
Yeah. So what I do is I walk you through a process of saying, okay, I either want to borrow one of the 7 that I have identified, or I walk you through a process of identifying your own value, and then walking through a couple of ideas around, okay, so what is the action that will help you? What's the behavior? What's the habit that you're going to start implementing? And then those 3 steps, make it easy, make it small, and celebrate small wins. So I give you some tools and methodology around how are you going to more effectively put this into your life? Because like me, you probably will look at those and think, I've heard that I should do that. I know I've been told that I should do that before, but I've never been successful in implementing that as a consistent habit. And so it's going to walk you through exactly how to make it more consistent. There's also a little tracker. One of the ways that we change behavior is by tracking. If you want to change what you eat, start tracking everything that you eat. You'll almost immediately start changing what you eat. So there's a little tracker. You can jot your habit down and check off the boxes every day that you do them. And you'll see that your consistency around doing it increases. So it's kind of a step-by-step. Pick your virtue or value or what the core thing is you want to work on. Pick your habit. And then I give you the tools to actually make it consistent.
Guys, I can't express the importance of having people in your corner who help you to implement these different changes. Even if you're not working directly one-on-one with Jason or in his programs or whatever, downloading this guide that costs you nothing will literally help to give you a rubric and a structure for implementing these changes in your life. Again, the people you spend time with, the content that you digest is ultimately who it is that you become. And if you've been saying to yourself, I want to incorporate new habits, this is the time to make changes. I'm ready to see the light from the darkness, even if you're not in a place of total darkness, but you want it to be a little bit more bright, then download this guide. Links are in the description. And if you've been vibing with our conversation, then you know that vibe is only going to continue when you go there and you download that guide. Jason, this has been awesome. Let me ask you, for people who want to continue this, how can people contact and or follow you?
Yeah, there's a contact thing there, and on the website, the Jason Harwood. It's funny because there's like a real estate guy or something like that who's also Jason Harwood, and he has jasonharwood.com. So that's why it's thejasonharwood.com. But there is a contact form there that you can email me, and then I'm at the Jason Harwood on Instagram, and you can follow me there and message me. And I always tell people this is literally the topic that I love to talk about more than any other. So if you're kind of starting a habit journey, or if you're going through something like this, you can use the contact form there on the website, or message me on Instagram and just let me know, because I would love to talk through with you. What's the value that you're focusing on? How are you making it small? How are you making it easy? And kind of give you some additional tips and tools and things like that. And so, yeah, feel free to reach out through the website or on Instagram.
Awesome. Thank you very much for being on the show, Jason. It's been a pleasure talking to you. And I can't wait to maybe even have you back in the future.
Yes, I'd love it. Thank you, Brandon.
You now have the structure and the guide in order to create and install new powerful habits into your life so that you can live a more prosperous life personally and in your business or your family, professionally, personally, all different areas. And really, it's not just about the habits. Before the habits comes the foundation, and the foundation is those core principles. You can check out the principles that Jason started with at his guide, Happily Ever Habits, at thejasonharwood.com. Links are in the description. Again, if you took any value away from this conversation with Jason and myself, please share this show with just one person in passing, in your conversations, on social media, wherever you hang out. Share this show with just one person, only if you took away value or guidance from it. Thank you so much for being the best part of the Be Better team. Thank you for tuning in. And until we talk again next time, continue to be better.